Hey, I'm Rachel from Two Crazy Campers, and we are here at the 2023 Florida RV Super Show here in Tampa. And we had the opportunity to catch up with our good friend Chris and coal miner who's here as part of this interview. And we're going to be talking today about what are some things that you should be looking for and asking about if you are trying to get into your very first RV. So like I said, this is such a privilege to get to chat with Chris, who not only is an RV owner herself, but also took it a step further and went to RV school in order to know how to work on her own RV. And when we got into this RV, Eleanor, it was our second RV experience, but our first one was a pop-up camper. So this was the first RV that we were getting into, this travel trailer, that had a lot of bells and whistles. And we were really excited. We were, we had a refrigerator inside of our camper and we had a bathroom and like all of these things that really made it feel like home. Mm-hmm. But this isn't a home. A trailer's built a little bit differently. There are some things to look for, even though I would say even the cabinets looked super substantial, but they're made differently and you have to close them differently. I mean, there's just a lot of things to take into consideration. And I wish that we had Chris with us when we were picking out Eleanor, but I was hoping that since you're here, we could talk a little bit about things to look for when you are purchasing an RV, your first, your second, and also maybe some red flags when you go to a dealership or you make a trade with somebody for an RV.
Definitely. Well, I made a list and I've got tips and I've got opinions. So I think it's an opinion, an RV refrigerator. So there are certain types of refrigerators. There's different kinds. Today we have residential refrigerators going into RVs. Mm-hmm. In a unit like this, you don't see it very often because they're pretty heavy.
Yeah.
But in some of the larger motorhomes, meaning it's a drivable RV, you can see a lot of residential refrigerators and also in fifth wheels. That's not a big deal for this case. But in a lot of slides, you'll see refrigerators and kitchens in the slide. And I just don't think that's a good idea just because of the way these refrigerators work. Mm-hmm. There's a venting process that has to happen and, hot air rises. And it doesn't necessarily always make great right turns or left turns, depending on which way you're going. Right. And so to me, they're just not as efficient. And so I don't recommend a refrigerator and a slide out if it's an absorption refrigerator. And that's your typical, it runs off of gas or electric type of refrigerator.
Now that is a great thing to think about because a lot of times we see, a new rig at one of these shows or maybe on a dealer lot and you're walking into it the way you would walk into your home. Like things located in spaces that feel familiar. Right. And like you're saying, so if it happens to be I walk into a rig and it looks really nice to have the kitchen there on that slide. And you're thinking, well, wow, okay, it gives you a lot of space. But you're saying that you really have to think about what's on that slide because exactly. Even though it looks beautiful in its position and you may feel like, wow, I really like it over there, you have to be thinking about maintenance for this thing.
Right.
Are there some other things that you think you'd keep off of a slide?
Not so much on the slide. That's not a big deal. But where things are located makes a difference too. For example, in my first RV, I had a leak from the water pump. Now this happens. It's not that there was a defect or anything, but a connection just came a little loose. And so now it's leaking and water's coming out. And I didn't know at the time that it was the water pump. And I'm looking everywhere. Where in the world? Of course, most people are going to think a leak is coming from the ceiling and there's no water on the walls. So I'm thinking, well, what can this be? And it turned out it was the water pump. Well, where's the water pump? Well, the water pump was located in an exterior compartment behind a little screw panel that's this big underneath the master bedroom area, where I literally had to get into the compartment, unscrew these 4 screws. How would I know it's even there? Right? The average person wouldn't, but I'm looking everywhere. And I have to reach my arm in, and I go all the way here. And meantime, I'm in this compartment. If you're not built for this, it's going to be difficult. And then to actually figure out that I just need to tighten this connection.
Yeah.
If you don't know where those things are located, or if they're not easily accessible and something breaks, then that's going to cost you a lot more money to have a tech come out. And then they have to look for it, because oddly enough, RV manufacturers don't always put the same thing in the same location every time they build an RV. So we have to play this game of, where's Waldo?
Now, I know that you are naturally handy, right? I am not. Joe is handy, but I am not very handy. You are naturally handy, but you decided to go to that next step and actually go to RV tech school.
Right.
Was it with a business in mind, or was it to make sure that you knew how to operate your own, machinery?
I'm pretty handy around the house, but then when it came to RV and the way that the appliances and everything in an RV work, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how things worked, especially the refrigerator, the water heater, similar but not the same, all the different parts of an RV, jacks. I didn't know how those worked, and so I just wanted to know. And so I was able to take some time and go to RV school and get the training on it. And then I found out later that it's actually a pretty lucrative job too.
Yeah, because the thing is that I think you do need some help, and you could take an RV tech with you when you're looking for an RV.
Sure. And I really recommend getting an inspection done. Yes, it's it's money up front, but it's peace of mind at the outset, but also it could help identify some problems. Now, whether you're buying from a dealer or from a person who's just selling their rig themselves, it's great to get that someone else's eyes, especially if you are like really wanting this RV.
Yeah.
You might be blind to it.
So when we're talking about inspections and shopping, in a dealership, what do you do as a consumer if the place where you're trying to purchase it from says, no inspections, we don't allow you to bring in an outside inspector? Or if you're, buying something off of maybe like RV Trader and the other person doesn't want to bring in an inspector?
That's easy. Walk away, because it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And to me, that's a little deceitful. It feels like they're hiding something anyway.
Yeah. Now, if I have a lot of questions, how many questions are too many questions? When does it get weird? Like we need to move on. If I don't feel clear about a certain, component on my RV.
Well, honestly, I think that before you purchase, if you've never had an RV before, I suggest renting an RV. Because just here at the Tampa RV show, we have seen rigs range from $10,000-$15,000 up to $2.5 million.
Yes.
And if you're willing to invest that kind of money into an RV, and you have never had an RV before, then I really suggest renting one first. Now, if you don't know if you want a drivable or a pull behind, then you might want to make that decision, or make that decision after. But you could rent all the different kinds, whether you want to take it to a camping site or if you want to have it set up for you. I recommend renting, just so you can see what you like and what you don't like, because $500 for an RV rental is a drop in the bucket compared to what you're going to spend on an RV itself.
And that is so true. And we're seeing the prices really go up. I mean, it makes sense that they're going up. Prices for everything is going up. But when we bought Eleanor in 2020 or 2019, it was $25,000. And now you can buy one half this size and it's $38,000. So prices are going up. And like you're saying, it's worth the investment. You may find out that camping's not even for you, right? So you want to make sure that you are in a rig that you feel comfortable in, and that the layout actually works for you. Because especially if you're bringing an extended family and you're thinking like, oh, no problem, I'm going to bring my mom and she's going to sleep on the dining room table that like converts. And then you actually bring her on a trip and have her live in the space and be like, no, this will not work for me. So you don't want to make this giant investment without knowing if it's actually a good fit for you. So that's great to point out. What's something else that's usually a trouble point for people?
Well, let's see. They think that they can use everything in the RV at any given time. There's a big difference between your home and your RV in that anytime you plug something in, maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not. It's going to depend on your location and if you're plugged into a park or if you're going to boondock. And that's another decision you have to make when you buy your RV. You may change your mind. You may not want to ever go outside of a park. And there are a lot of people out there who only RV at parks.
Yeah.
And that meaning that you have water, you have a place to dump your tanks, or you have electric already provided for you. But there's other people who want to do the exact opposite and only go out in the middle of the woods and sleep for a month. And the difference being power. Power is what's going to make or break you in your RV. There's the 12 volt side, and then there's the 110 volt side. Anything you can plug into a wall basically is your 110. But we're looking at your microwaves, your hair dryers, your air conditioners. Those things are going to have to use either a generator, solar, or power from a park type of post, right? So solar, this is a really good point. Everybody wants solar now.
Right.
And so something a salesperson will point out to you is this RV is solar ready. And you're thinking, that's fantastic. All I have to do is buy a solar panel and I'm set up. I can run everything off of it. No, you can't. It's really difficult to take a little 100-watt solar panel and run your air conditioner that consumes way more power than that. So it's something to consider beforehand. You want to do some research
of like what is available to use when you're on the grid or off the grid.
Exactly.
And that's been something for us. And you forget, you honestly forget because, we'll be out someplace and I'll go to try to plug something in and Joe's like, that's not going to work. And I'll say, well, this light's on. And he's like, yeah, but that's not the electricity, babe. Like, that's not for that. The black tank. I mean, the bathroom in an RV is very different than at home.
It's very different.
You are thinking so much about your plumbing when you are in a truck. I never think about my plumbing at home. I'm not thinking about where the heat and the hot shower is coming from. I'm not thinking about like where the waste is going or, that we have to be involved in evacuating that from our trailer. What are some common mistakes that you've had to answer the call for when it comes to a bathroom in a trailer?
That's a good one. That's one of the most frequent calls I think that we get is for the black tank. It won't empty, or it's backed up, or it's just black tank issues. Smell. That's another common problem. Is my rig stinks because of the toilet. So the most common thing is when you're at a park for a long period of time, people will leave their valve open, thinking that it's just like my sewer at home. It's going directly into the park sewer. Well, that's not the case because the dynamics of the tank that it's in has to be slanted. The liquid waste will run downhill and the solid waste will remain uphill.
Yeah.
Until it decides to form what we call poo mountain.
Right.
And the best thing you can do in that situation is leave your valves closed until the tank is full and then empty your tank. I don't necessarily recommend going down the road with full tanks, but at the same time, you need to have liquid in your tank. And that's another thing a lot of people don't think about. When they empty their tanks, yay, we got empty tanks. We don't have to worry about it. No, you actually need to put some liquid back in there to kind of clean it a little bit and to break down the remainder of the solid waste that's left behind.
Yeah, which again, I don't think about this in my residential home. You're talking about adding water back in. Weight is a thing when it comes to a trailer, even how you pack it. Now, if the majority of what I'm bringing is clothes and shoes. I want to have a whole bunch of things packed in the front of our vehicle where my bedroom may be. But weight distribution, especially when, I mean, you have a class A, weight distribution is very, very important. What are some, mistakes that people can make in that area?
Well, you can always have too much weight on one side or the other, and that'll affect how the RV is going down the road. It'll also affect the wear on your tires. But whether or not your tanks are full and how those tanks are attached to the frame of your RV. Some are only attached with some thin aluminum straps. Some of them are bolted on. Some of them are barely hanging on. So it just depends on where you're at, what you've got going on, what you're doing, coming, going, and that sort of thing. With weight, though, think about especially in a Class A, there's not containers, but there's bins underneath for storage.
Yeah.
Well, if you put all your tools, and say you like to work out, you put all your weights on one side of the RV, and then you don't put anything but blankets and pillows on the other, that's some mismanagement of weight distribution, and it can cause problems later on. It can cause fishtailing and swaying and all sorts of things, especially in a trailer. In your motorhomes, you'll feel it when you start steering, and you're like, what is that? And then maybe you'll figure it out. Google is your friend. But when it comes to trailers, there's a sway thing going on, and having the right equipment to handle that is important.
Something that we noticed, we were talking to somebody even at the last RV super show that we were at, but we've seen it a lot of times on the road, and that is the wrong sized vehicle towing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Like the wrong size trailer. Because, a big selling point is if you think, maybe the person you're purchasing it from says, oh, this is plenty big enough. The truck you have right now is plenty big enough to tow this. And of course, we've got big eyes. We want to get the most value for our money.
Absolutely.
So sometimes if it's like the difference between, I get a couple of extra feet and the dealer is saying like, this is going to be no problem.
Right.
And we've seen some really bad accidents on the side of the road. So what are some of the things that you need to look for when it comes to, the towing capacity for your vehicle and also even the trailer hitch itself? What are some things that we need to be on the lookout for?
Well, you got to make sure you've got the right size hitch for the trailer that you're buying. And the thing to look for is the gross vehicle weight rating. And that's on the sticker on the RV itself. And it's really important because that is the total amount of weight that you could carry in the RV. Now, if it's a motorhome, then that's the total amount of weight, including the people that are riding in it, that you should put in a motorhome. So that's the tail end.
Right.
So when it comes to the trailer towing capacity, right, of a vehicle, each one of the hitches that are on the back of a vehicle, they're rated if you already have one. Now, dealers will actually offer to install a hitch.
Okay.
And then it's their responsibility to put the right one on. But check this out, though. What if it's a 5,000-pound hitch and you want to tow a 10,000-pound trailer? Will it tow it? It might move it, but will it do it safely? Not so much.
So let's talk tires, because a TPMS system is what saved our current camping trip, because we nearly had a blowout. We were alerted to a problem in enough time for us to get to pull over. It really saved us. And I don't think that you think about tires as much on your regular vehicle. You're thinking, okay, I might have a blowout, I'll pull over, it won't be a big deal, somebody will come and fix it. But there's a lot that goes into trailer tires. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to know that weight rating that we were talking about before. What is the maximum amount of weight that your rig can handle? In my case, with a Class A, it's 22,000 pounds in my specific vehicle. It's a gas engine. So my tires are, manufactured recommended. And so I got those on there, and I look them up online to find out what weight rating the inflation needs to be for how much weight I'm carrying. And it turns out it's just like maybe 5 pounds less than the weight, the PSI that's on the tire. So mine happens to be 105 PSI. And before every trip, you should be checking your tire pressure. And TPMS, that's tire pressure management system, or tire pressure monitoring system, depending on what company you buy them from, that is going to always be scanning your tires to check what their pressure is. And in your case, you had probably something that came up and started flashing at you and said, "Hey, you've got a problem on your tire." And if you're not driving that vehicle, you're definitely not going to know. And in a dually situation, you may not know, you may not feel it. So it's really important to pay attention to your tires. Those are your life, especially if you're driving in the vehicle that happens to have those tires on them.
Right. Oh my goodness. So single or double axle? Because we were looking at a lot of different trailers over at the Super Show this weekend, and you naturally want to go towards the single tire only because of cost, right? The cost is different. You can get the same, 16-foot trailer with a single tire, and the price point is, $10,000 less. So I'm like, I'll make it work with a single tire. But what's the danger of that?
Well, if you lose one tire, your whole trailer could flip. You're going down the highway, you shouldn't go over 65 if you're towing. But if you're going down the highway and you lose one of those single tires, that's a major catastrophe waiting to happen. Whereas if you had two axles, that means you've got 4 tires on the ground. One goes out, you can limp to the next exit and get another tire.
What a difference between it being feel like a blowout, not fun, but feel like a blowout versus a major catastrophe where you just lose the whole thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you're looking back and you're like, this would have been a $10,000 difference. This would have been a $5,000 difference.
Right.
That's really, you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish for sure. Now, the biggest obstacle for me when we got into Eleanor was the slide. I was completely afraid of a slide. I got talked into it because luxury.
More space.
It was so much more space. You talked a little bit about having the refrigerator on the slide, and there could be a problem there. But what should I be looking for when it comes to a slide?
Well, I definitely want to be shown by somebody at the dealer or the previous owner, if you're buying a used, where and how do I get that slide back in if it fails to come back in when you're going down the road? If you can't get it out, that's a lesser of a problem. But if you can't get your slide to come back in,
I can't leave.
You can't go down the road. Please don't drive down the road with your slide out. It's dangerous and illegal, and I would think most places. And by the way, you'll ruin your RV.
Right.
But, so the slide, there's so many different types of slides now. There's through the frame, there's a Schwentech model. There's so many different ways to make an RV. There's cables. Ask up front, if there's a failure, how do I make this go back in? And usually it's pretty simple. You can use a drill, and they'll tell you, yeah, you just use a drill. It's really easy.
Show me.
Pretend like you're from Missouri and say, show me. All right? Because you want to see how to do it. It's a super common thing to happen. And to be able to take care of that yourself instead of costing at least $100 to call out somebody to help you, then you've got the knowledge. And you can, there's nothing wrong with recording a video while they do it on your phone. Take your phone out and record the video. I would record a video during their walkthrough when they're showing you your RV at the dealer. So they're showing you all the different things. That's a fire hose method. You're all excited. You just bought an RV. You're not thinking about how you're going to use it later.
So true. And you might want to just remember back, you're processing a lot. Especially when you're going through the walkthrough before you take ownership of it. They're showing you how to use everything, but how am I going to remember all of that? And I was going to ask you, what are some tools that you should keep with you at all times that you recommend just to have on tap?
Well, everybody's going to have a different opinion on that one, but a basic set of tools is fine. Anything more than that, and you're looking at DIY,
right?
In which case, you're going to have to buy the tool that you need for the job. In certain RVs, I think they're almost always either Phillips or a square bit, which is called a Robertson bit. So everything that you see that needs to be unscrewed in your RV is probably going to be one of those two types of screwdrivers. I like having an actual drill or an impact, but that's not necessary. You can do it with a hand tool. Harbor Freight
Yeah.
Super cheap and guaranteed for life.
What are some other, we were talking earlier off camera about things like surge protectors. Like
Oh my goodness, yeah.
How important is that? Is that something I really need, or is that just some like bougie extra?
That is something that I would never go without as an RV owner, and I always recommend it being a tech, because you never know what you're getting into in a power situation, other than if you're using your own generator. If you're in a park, maybe they have great power, but a lot of times they'll have brownouts. You'll lose power while you're gone. There's just so many different things that can happen. A spike, lightning, all these things. And if you have a surge suppressor or surge protector, that surge protector will take the hit. It'll fry it. And they are expensive. $300 average, I would say.
So worth it though.
Oh, so worth it, because that just saved your entire electrical system, probably several appliances. So I always recommend a surge suppressor or a surge protector. I think they're kind of the same thing, but one is going to suppress the brownouts and the spikes, and the other one is just gonna get fried if it takes a hit. So sometimes they're a combo, sometimes they're just different names for the same thing. But you plug it in to the post, and not only does it take care of the surges and spikes, it also tells you if that post is wired correctly before you even plug in your RV. You get a green light saying, yes, this is safe power and it's good. So I always recommend that. And it'll also tell you sometimes, especially in the fifth wheels or the 50 amp RVs, it'll tell you if there's a leg out. And you may not have power on half of your RV, and it could possibly be because half of the power is out and you're only actually a 30 amp coach now. But can you still run? Yes, absolutely. But you may not have full functionality, and that's why.
I will say a surge protector saved us. We were visiting a family member, and they had an electrician install a place for us to plug in our RV, and they had just made a mistake. There was just an error. And if we hadn't had the surge protector, we would not have known. We would have just blown up our entire RV, probably lost, a lot of appliances. And so we were really thankful and fine to waste that surge protector.
Absolutely. It did its job.
It did its job.
Absolutely.
Something that is so attractive and appealing to me and so cute when it's all up and out is the awnings. On these RVs. We love them, right?
Oh, yeah.
It makes it feel like a campsite, and we love putting everything under an awning. We've got our cooking area under an awning. We've got all the chairs out and everything.
Keeps the sun off the rig.
But there's been some times where I've been worried it's going to blow off. Like, should we be concerned?
Absolutely.
With how we display our awning?
Well, if you're in the coach, absolutely use your awning. It's great, especially keeping the sun off that side while you're trying to keep your rig cool as possible, especially if you're going out there without power in the middle of nowhere. Well, I think that was probably my number one call when I was working for a dealer.
Wow.
Was the awning. The awning broke. And it was because they either left the RV or went to bed and left the awning out. And overnight or while they were away, the wind picked up. And I've seen some crazy damage done to RVs that it could have been just a simple 30-second process to close up the awning. So I definitely recommend closing up the awning when you go to bed at night, or even in high winds. I mean, it can happen even if you're in your RV. Typically, you'll start feeling the RV rocking a little bit.
Right.
Because it's a sail attached to the side of your RV. And if you just take it in, it's better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
The last thing that we had talked about before was the use of a pressure regulator on your water.
Yes.
So city water in some areas of the country, world, really high pressure, and these lines aren't necessarily built to take it. There's little tiny tubes of plastic, whereas in our house, a lot of places are copper or much higher pressure. They can take the pressure better in a house, whereas in your RV, it was built with, I'm sorry to say, it's probably built pretty cheaply.
Yeah.
The wood in here is 1/8 of an inch plywood. And so when you're looking at plumbing, they didn't go much better quality in plumbing. Using a pressure regulator can stop a flood from happening inside your RV, even while you're gone, especially while you're gone.
Right.
If you don't see a leak until, 30 hours later, it's probably too late.
Well, and that's the thing. we don't have a problem until we have a problem.
Right.
So I want to try to avoid a problem, which means I probably need to get my trailer inspected every once in a while. How often? Should I have my own personal checklist? Should I call in an RV tech once a year, once every 6 months, depending on my frequency of, camping?
Right. Well, for me, I like to suggest to do it once a year, just a basic inspection. Now, you don't have to do the same PDI or pre-delivery inspection that a dealer is going to do every year, but especially the roof. And here in Florida, the sun is just really, really hard on RV roofs. And the sealant that we use around all the holes that we cut in the roof to make things comfortable, like the air conditioner and the vents, those have to have maintenance every once in a while. The caulking up there does not last forever. And I recommend once a year. And that's the main thing, is the roof. And then any problems that are inside that need to be addressed.
Yeah. One of the things that I get afraid of is even hanging up stuff in my RV. I'm afraid of like holes and things in that. Like, am I creating vulnerability points for like insects, or like, could I have problems? Should I be able to hang stuff up myself in the RV, or, what should I do about like decorating even?
Well, I would use the sticky putty or 3M strips to hang things up, just to be safe. And you have to know what you're screwing into if you put a screw through your wall. Typically, the way these are designed, if it's an exterior wall, there is whatever your exterior is, be it fiberglass, corrugated aluminum, or what have you. Then there's maybe a layer of styrofoam for insulation, maybe. I'm not sure, but maybe there's just air.
Right.
And then the interior layer of wall, which is usually 1/8 of an inch type of plywood MDF situation there. Maybe it's just wallpaper. It's tricky to know for sure what it is. But when you drill through that depending on the size of the screw you use, well, you could be drilling into a plumbing line, and you can't be sure in every RV. If you saw someone hang something in the middle of their wall, on the middle of this wall, near this door, it may not be the same in your RV, even if you have identical RVs. The manufacturers, the way they put these things together is from the inside out, and they are just trying to work hard and be efficient, and maybe they went over 2 or 3 inches. There's no standard for building an RV like there is for building a house where you have 16 inches or whatever between studs. That's not the case here.
Right. And that is so important, because I can't tell you, what we love about RVs is the fact that you can fit a lot of stuff in a small space, and that they're so efficient with hiding things like wires and tubes and things. But yeah, we've opened up cabinets, and it's something attached to my sink is in the entertainment center. So it's really important that you don't just like drill and like we'll get forgiveness for it later, because you could really cause some, major damage with that. I was going to ask you, there's lots of bells and whistles, and it seems like every single time there's a new show, there's more cool stuff inside of these rigs. But I was going to ask you, what is a bell and whistle that you understand is attractive, but really causes more of a headache than a help?
So the only thing that comes to mind is a washer and dryer combo, or a washer and dryer in an RV. I've worked on them, and so when I do work on them, I get to talk to the customer, because I don't have one in mind, and I do have a hookup for it, but I don't want it. The most common brand is Splendid, and I'm not saying anything against them, because I think they're an awesome company. Yeah. They're just very tiny units, because you're in an RV. So the load capacity is very small. Do they work? Yes.
But we probably push it.
Do they work well? Mostly, yeah. But, you might have some damp clothes, but I have damp clothes coming out of my dryer anyway at home. With the company though, Splendid, I can't say enough about them. They have awesome tech support. So if you are wanting a washer and dryer in your RV, they're the company to go with. But with the washer and dryer, most people that I talk to say it's not worth it. You can take your clothes, and most people who I think RV full time will tell you, just take them to the laundromat. They have services now. I didn't know this until I tried it. There's services now. You take your entire 5 loads of laundry to the
They wash it, they dry it, and
they
fold it.
Fold it.
It's nice. It's totally worth it. In fact, that's a treat that we
Yes.
do when we come back as weekend warriors, that I'm like, I don't want to spend the entire following day from a trip doing laundry.
I need to recover.
It's actually very, very reasonable service usually. So yeah, and that kind of brings up a lot of things about appliances in general. So, you know, you get on in these RVs and it's so cool to see, oh my gosh, it's got an oven. Oh my goodness, it's got like, you know, a microwave, and it has a great entertainment center. There's all of these little appliances. Now we're seeing dishwashers in them, which sounds very, very appealing. But at least from my perspective, I've noticed most of the time they're too small to really utilize. And I think you may get into a more gadgets, more problem situation.
Right.
Have you had any experiences with, you know, people getting appliances that seemed good and then maybe they caused some headaches?
Not really for me personally. I have heard a lot of horror stories. In my opinion, the easiest RV is the ones with the least bells and whistles. Start out simple. You're not in a tent.
Yeah.
Yay!
Let's celebrate.
If there's a toilet, a shower, a sink, a table, some chairs, a refrigerator, and a sink, and a bed, ta-da! That's really all we need to get started. And there's some really great affordable RVs out there in that area without all the bells and whistles. And honestly, if it's your first RV, it's not going to be your last. So go basic, and then find out what's really important to you and go from there.
Oh, that's great advice. Because I'll tell you, even with some of the things that we have, I'll bring along a George Foreman grill or an air fryer, something that's just, you know, a very inexpensive, you know, bring along to on a trip, and it works just fine as far as like cooking. So, you know, the more appliances, the more that you need maintenance for it. And then also you have to think about, what is the life of your home microwave? And what do you do when it goes out? You know, it either becomes a storage bin or closet in your rig, or you've got to go through the effort of replacing it, finding something that same size. And, you know, parts continue to be an issue.
Definitely.
Right now. Okay, so before we let Chris go, I'm going to ask a question to the audience here. Post down in the comments down below before we ask our last question of Chris. Would you like for us to bring Chris back to show us what to do in an annual walk-around inspection? Just leave that down in the comments down below. Would you like us to bring Chris back and us go around the camper and see what do we need to look at when it comes to troubleshooting the annual inspection on Eleanor? But I did have one last question, and that is, do you have any extra advice for people who are, you know, going to be shopping for a camper right now?
Know your reason, know your why for going out and camping. Are you going out so that you can enjoy a state park for a week or two? Are you going to go out in the middle of nowhere where there's no power? You've got to consider what your goal is for camping, if you're going to need power or not. Because if you get a travel trailer and you don't purchase a generator, and you think you're going to go out in the middle of the woods and camp using your microwave, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
So know what you want before you go shopping. And the internet is your friend. There are so many different videos out there. There's so many different RV styles out there. Just have fun searching. It's so much fun to search. Go to a dealer with no intention of buying. Leave your wallet at home and just walk through all of them and see what you think, and then rent them. Right? Rent them first, see what you like, and then go from there.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and expertise with us, Chris. If you like videos like this, please hit the subscribe button down below. Also hit the thumbs up button. That really does help the channel, and it also shows us what kind of videos you enjoy watching. Also, don't forget to hit the little bell icon, and that way every single time we upload a new video, you'll be alerted to it. Until next time, happy camping!